We're in that period in the Jewish calendar where we're counting the days between Passover and Shavuot. We call it counting the Omer. Unfortunately, it was tragically in the news just a couple of days ago, in international news, because of what happened in Israel, as we talked about last night. We lit a candle. Rabbi Strauss memorialized those who were killed or were injured. That day was Lag BaOmer. We called it Lag BaOmer. And it's called Lag BaOmer because in the Jewish world, every letter of the Hebrew alphabet has a number value. We're counting 50 days between Passover and Shavuot. And the letter Lamed is the value of 30, and Gimel is the value of 3. And so Lag BaOmer is the 33rd Lag, the 33rd day in the Omer counting period. 33 days towards the 50 days to get to Shavuot. But I actually didn't want to talk about that this morning. I just wanted to talk about the general reason of why we're counting these days. What's the big deal? We don't connect other holidays to each other. We seem to want to connect Passover to Shavuot. Why do we do that? And I found 5 reasons for doing that. And for each of those reasons, I think there's a lesson for us in this COVID and almost done with COVID world that we've been living in for the past 14 or so months. So let's look at these 5 reasons for counting the period of time between Passover and Shavuot, connecting these two holidays. The first reason is a historical one. Most of the historical scholars suggest that the reason we were counting this was, first of all, to know that an Omer is a measure of grain, kind of like a handful of grain stalks. So, and it's the barley harvest, because the barley harvest begins on Passover and goes until Shavuot. So for the 50 days while we're harvesting barley, the tradition was in temple times to bring a handful of barley grains, barley sheaves, to the temple to offer to God. And so there was an agricultural reason for doing this, because while we're harvesting the crops, God forbid there should be a severe flood, destroy the crops, we won't have anything to eat. Or God forbid there should be a drought, the crops will all wilt, and again, we won't have anything to eat. So for the 50 days while we're harvesting, it's a way of thanking God for the harvest and praying to God that nothing will happen to ruin the harvest so that we will have a good season. By the way, at the end of the barley harvest on Shavuot, that's also the beginning of the wheat harvest that comes after it. I'm not a farmer, but this is what I'm told. In our day, most of us are not farmers. We do not have that close connection to the earth that our ancestors did, because we live in cities. This aspect of the counting of the Omer reminds us of the barley and wheat harvests. It reminds us city folk that even though we dwell in concrete jungles, we still eat wheat bread, and we still enjoy a bowl of barley soup. We still depend on the earth and its bounty for everything we eat, and for everything we wear, and for the roof over our heads, and all the other conveniences of the modern world. We are dependent on the bounty of this world. There's a cartoon I saw at the beginning of this pandemic from Israel. It was a picture of a large globe of the earth, and it was published when we were all still locked up in our homes, and all the places of business were closed, and there was no traffic on the streets. And the cartoon had this globe, and on it was a Post-it note, and in Hebrew it wrote, Segur Laregel Shiputzim, closed temporarily for repairs. Another cartoon I saw from here in the United States was similar. It was a black square with white letters written across it, and the white letters spelled out, kind of feeling like the earth just sent us all to our rooms to think about what we've done. Now, I don't take that to mean that the pandemic was caused by environmental abuse, but our staying home for a few weeks did clear up the atmosphere. It got us all walking around our neighborhoods. Many of us suddenly became more aware of the world around us and under us and over us. At the very least, it gave us an opportunity to be grateful for the amazing planet that we live on and for the harvest seasons that make our shopping at Randall's or H-E-B possible. So that is counting the days of the harvest, paying attention to the earth and its abundance, being grateful for all that offers, and trying to be more responsible for making sure it will continue to be vibrant for our children and our grandchildren. A second reason for connecting Passover to Shavuot is the one that's most commonly given in rabbinic tradition. We are connecting the celebration of freedom at Passover. We're now free from slavery with our purpose and mission that we were given at Mount Sinai with the Ten Commandments and God's laws. It's not enough to be free. With freedom comes responsibility. And at Sinai, we learn what God hopes that we can create: a society of justice and compassion, and a society that cares about its people and is honest and fair to everyone. On Shavuot, we learn the purpose of our freedom, the mission that we're charged with, what we're supposed to do with our freedom. During this pandemic, our society has also been shaken by scenes of racial injustice. How we respond to this trauma will determine the extent to which we can honestly say that we uphold the American values of fairness and equality for every human being. We know that the pandemic has affected some people in our country more than others. First, of course, are those families who lost loved ones to the disease. Their lives will be forever changed. Others were stricken by the illness in more debilitating and lasting ways than some people. They also struggle with long-term effects of this illness. Are there ways that we can bring comfort and support to these people who are suffering? Will we be thoughtful and compassionate as our Torah teaches us? That is part of our mission as Jews, part of what we learn in the laws given to us at Sinai. But even among those who did not get sick, there are differences in how people were affected. Many people lost their jobs. Many people could not pay the rent or buy food to feed their families. Most of our children were unable to learn in classrooms. Some were not able to learn much at all this past year, while others were able to learn successfully with their computers on the internet. Medical care was not readily available to so many people who don't have insurance. Perhaps they had insurance to their jobs, but they lost their jobs. In short, economic inequalities, inequalities in housing, inequalities in hunger, inequalities in education, and inequalities in medical care were deepened by this pandemic. Are the rest of us ready to open our hearts and contribute some of our time and resources to help those people recover from their losses? That too is part of the mission we took on at Sinai. So this is a second way we can think about counting the Omer, the days between Passover and Shavuot. It is counting each day to connect our freedom as Americans and as Jews to a purpose and a mission as our Jewish tradition inspires us to achieve. A third understanding of this connection between these two holidays is anticipation. In our ancestors' imagination, Passover was the holiday of betrothal. God betrothed the Israelites. It was this love and romance. And this period of romance continues for 50 days, leading up to, of course, the wedding day. And at every Jewish wedding, there has to be a wedding contract, a ketubah. And God gave us a ketubah of the Ten Commandments at Mount Sinai on Shavuot. And so this is an anticipation. We're getting ready for our wedding day. It's excitement, it's wonder, and we're just counting the days till we get there. Especially now that we have vaccines readily available and more people are getting the vaccine, many of us are counting the days until we will finally be able to return to some kind of normal. Indoor parties with lots of people and no one needing to wear a mask. Services at Beth Yeshurun that you don't need to register for. Right now you only need to register for Fridays, but eventually not even on Fridays. And we can fill every seat here in the sanctuary. And then we can have lunch services in a full Pulaski Rauch auditorium behind us there. And no one will have to wear a mask. Going to a concert or a ballet or the theater and filling every seat in the audience. And no one will have to wear a mask. I'm counting the days. I don't know how many we have left, but I'm definitely counting those days. That's a counting of excitement and anticipation. A fourth way to look at this is purification. Our ancestors were slaves for generations in Egypt. They had a slave mentality. Now they're free. They have free will. They can do whatever they want, but it takes time to explore that freedom, to understand that freedom, to get the idea that we have responsibilities now that we're free. We can make choices, but we need to make good choices. That slave mentality had to be slowly washed away as freedom was gradually understood and appreciated. There was this period of purification before we could receive the Ten Commandments. And similarly, you can think of it like going deep sea diving. If you go deep sea diving, you can't just come up right away, right? You get the bends. So you need to slowly go up so that you can gradually adjust to the change in pressure in the water. It's also like coming out of a serious illness. It takes time to heal. You have to do rehabilitation, physical therapy, to restore your muscles to full vigor and health. And it's also like coming back from a pandemic and needing to slowly begin to go out again. Eating maybe at a restaurant outdoors for the first time. Shopping at the supermarket for the first time in months. Then maybe eating at a restaurant indoors, but maybe the restaurant only has 25% capacity. Then maybe 50% capacity. And slowly, slowly we emerge from our captivity and we return to public life. This is counting the days as steps toward normalcy. And finally, a fifth way we can think about this comes from Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik, who suggests there's two kinds of counting in the Hebrew language. Minyan, where we're counting to find 10 people in a group, the minimum number of people for public prayer services. But once we get to 10, we're done. And then there's Sphira, the counting of the Omer. Here we count each individual day as an important day, like counting diamonds. Sure, you want to know how many diamonds you have, but each diamond is important in its own right. Each one has its own unique beauty. Sfirat HaOmer reminds us that each day is beautiful. We make each day count. We don't need to focus all the time on the goal. We can enjoy each moment with family and friends. This is hopefully a lesson that we've also learned this past year. Even though we've often joked that it was no longer so easy to remember what day of the week it was, every day seemed like Tuesday or Wednesday or Thursday or whatever. Nevertheless, hopefully we figured out by now that each day really is a new day. Each day we can learn something new, make a new friend, deepen a relationship with a friend we already have. We can appreciate more the gift of life. Each day is a beautiful new diamond, waiting to delight our eyes, to spark our imagination, to touch our hearts. This is counting each day to make each day count for its own special qualities. So here then are 5 different ways to look at this period of counting between Passover and Shavuot, things that we can learn in our lives now as we come out of this pandemic. We're counting the days of the harvest, which reminds us of the richness of the planet Earth and urges us to pay attention to its rhythm and dynamics so that we may preserve it for future generations. We're counting our freedom from slavery on Passover to our purpose and mission that we receive on Mount Sinai, our mission to create a society that is kind and compassionate, as well as just, fair, and honest for each and every person created in the image of God. We're counting the days with excitement and anticipation, as a person might do in counting the days to his or her wedding. But we are looking forward to the excitement we'll experience when we can finally go back to normal life. And at the same time, we're counting each day as consecutive steps toward that normalcy, doing a little bit more each day to return to life as we knew it 14 months ago. And finally, at the same time, we recognize each day as a beautiful new diamond, a moment in time to cherish for itself and to appreciate its wondrous opportunities. We have a couple weeks left to the Omer. And who knows how many more weeks until we're finally finished with this pandemic. Let's make each day and each week count. Shabbat Shalom.